I stood at the edge of the ballroom, tucked into the shadows like a forgotten extra in someone else's dream. My sister now, Mrs. Camilla Reed, twirled in a silk cloud of a wedding gown that cost more than my car. $30,000 worth of tool and ego. Meanwhile, my credit score was quietly flatlining. The chandelier above glittered like it was in on the joke. Camilla's laughter ricocheted off the marble floor as she and her new husband, Trent, danced like they were the leads in a rom-com no one asked for. I checked the payment dashboard on my tablet. One vendor still hadn't been paid. Surprise, surprise. "Juniper, why aren't you dancing?" my mom asked. Her tone came laced with that familiar, passive-aggressive concern she always saved for me. "You look stiff." I gave her a flat smile and held up the tablet. "Just making sure we don't get sued. Someone's got to keep the wolves from the door." She waved a bejeweled hand like my concerns were adorable. "Oh, sweetie, you worry too much. Camilla's always been the dreamer. You're the one who, how do I say this, nicely handles things." Translation: I'm the one who cleans up everyone's messes. I've always been the reasonable one. The budgeter, the fixer, the co-signer. 2 months ago, Camilla showed up sobbing on my doorstep with mascara streaked down her face like war paint. "Trent's startup is just about to launch," she pleaded. "The bank said no unless we had a strong co-signer. You're the only one who qualifies." And me, I was so tired of being the yes girl I didn't even push back. That's how they get you. Guilt dressed up as love. So I said yes, like an idiot, like family. I tapped the screen again. The clause was still there, buried under 5 pages of legal jargon. If they missed even one payment, the full responsibility shifted to the co-signers. My parents signed too, of course, all wide-eyed and trusting. My mom touched my shoulder, mistaking my silence for nostalgia. "Remember when Camilla first picked this venue, she said it was the one. Worth every cent, all 80,000 of them. What she forgot to mention, Camilla had cried that day too, begged us to help, begged me to co-sign. I remember every promise she made through trembling lips. We'll pay every installment. We just need the jumpstart." I also remember how she skipped 2 payments in month 1. Trent caught my eye across the room. He winked, raised his champagne glass. I smiled back through gritted teeth. He had no idea I knew. About the clause, about the flights. 2 one-way tickets booked to a country without an extradition treaty. I'd seen the email confirmations. Trent had used her birthday as the password. Rookie mistake. "Sunset photos are ready," the wedding planner chirped. "Bride wants you in them." Of course she did. Camilla floated over and grabbed my arm. "Come on, June. You have to be in the family shots. You made this day happen." If only she knew how true that was. Outside, the sun dipped low, coating the terrace in golden light. Camilla posed like she was born for Vogue. My dad cracked a joke. My mom fanned herself dramatically. The photographer clicked away. Big smiles everyone she called. I smiled, thinking about the email I'd gotten that morning from my best friend Sadie, who happened to work in corporate law. "The clause is airtight," she'd written. "If they default or flee, everything reverts to you and your parents." One flash, another. Camilla wrapped an arm around my shoulder. "You're the best sister in the world," she whispered, her breath thick with champagne. Behind her, Trent was checking his phone. Again. 2 weeks ago, I watched him book those tickets. Tonight, I opened my laptop in my hotel room, pulled up the document. All the signatures were still there, mine at the bottom, neat and centered. Camilla's big, loopy letters, Trent's confident scribble. My parents' rushed scrawls, like they had somewhere better to be. I traced my finger over the clause. Then I poured a drink. Because the real wedding gift hadn't been unwrapped yet. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a corner booth at my favorite coffee shop, staring down at a cold latte and 42 missed calls. Only 2 of those were from unknown numbers. The rest, Camilla, Trent, and my mom, of course. Sadie slid into the booth across from me, balancing 2 fresh drinks and that look she gave me when I was about to make things harder than they needed to be. "You check Instagram yet?" I didn't answer. Just turned my phone so she could see the screen. Camilla's latest post was up. Her and Trent, on a beach, holding up coconuts with umbrellas in them like props. The caption read, "Living debt-free and chasing our destiny. New life, no regrets, blessed. B." Sadie sipped her drink and raised an eyebrow. No regrets, huh? That's rich coming from two people who ghosted their creditors. And me, I muttered, scrolling past comments filled with heart emojis and fake congratulations. I opened my messages. My mom had sent me another text that morning. The bank called again. Please take care of this. Your father's blood pressure can't handle the stress. Classic. Emotional blackmail disguised as concern. Sadie leaned in. Have you told them yet about the clause? Not yet, I said. Let them get comfy. Sadie raised her cup. To Karma on vacation. I clinked mine against hers. To contracts. That night, I lay on the couch with a heating pad across my stomach and my laptop balanced on my knees. I opened my inbox. Camilla had finally decided to grace me with a voicemail. I played it on speaker. Hey, June. Sorry we've been so hard to reach. The Wi-Fi here is trash. Anyway, about those payment reminders. You're just so good with money. I know you'll figure something out. Pause. Oh, and could you chill with the calls? Trent says it's messing with our energy. We're trying to stay aligned. I closed my eyes and exhaled through my teeth. Sadie texted me from across the city. Send it, it's time. She meant the email. The one I'd been sitting on for 3 weeks. The one with the loan agreement attached, the clause clearly highlighted, and screenshots of Camilla and Trent's travel itinerary as proof they'd left the country. I opened the draft and hovered my finger over the send button. This isn't about revenge, I whispered to myself. It's about being done. Then I tapped. Sent. The silence afterward was weird. Not peaceful, not satisfying, just quiet, like closing a door you can't open again. The next morning, I had a reply from the loan agency. Thank you, Ms. Elliott. Our legal team will process this clause and begin the transfer protocol. Expect an update within 72 hours. I barely had time to process the email before my phone buzzed again. A new message from Trent. Wow, real classy Juniper. Camilla's crying. Hope you're happy. I didn't respond. I blocked him instead. A few minutes later, my mom called. I didn't pick up. Instead, I sat on my balcony watching the sunrise and opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside were PDFs, scanned receipts, old bank statements, proof of every dollar I'd ever fronted for this family. Medical bills? Camilla's college fees. The down payment on her first car. Even the rent for her experimental photography studio that lasted exactly 67 days. The total just shy of what she owed now. Poetic. 2 days passed, then 3. I got a call from the loan agency. They'd officially transferred the debt to the co-signers, me and my parents. The clause had activated. Camilla and Trent had vanished with their debt-free dreams, and the rest of us were left holding the bill. That night, Christian called. My ex, the only ex who still called for the right reasons. I just saw Camilla's post, he said, skipping the pleasantries. Are you okay? Why wouldn't I be? I asked. Calm, controlled. I remember when you emptied your savings to help your dad with surgery, he said. And Camilla was tagging herself in Paris. I paused. Thought about the email, the clause, the weight I'd been carrying for years without even realizing how heavy it was. That version of me is gone, I said. The one who fixes everything. The one who just absorbs it all. Christian was quiet for a second, then good. After we hung up, I pulled up the contract again. Section 6.3. The language was clear. In the event of travel without payment plan, boom, immediate liability for remaining co-signers. Sadie called the next morning. They're freaking out, she said. Your mom left me a voicemail. I don't even have her number. What did she say? She said, and I quote, Juniper has gone too far. I laughed. A real sharp laugh. The kind that catches in your throat but still feels good. A few hours later, my mom showed up at my office. No warning, no appointment. Just walked into the lobby like a tornado in pearls. She looked put together, but her hands trembled when she placed a stack of letters on my desk. They're threatening legal action, she said. They said the payment window closed. They're freezing our accounts. I nodded slowly. That's usually what happens when you ignore debt. Her voice cracked. But it's Camilla's loan. No, I said. It's our loan. Yours, Dad's, mine. We didn't know. You signed the contract, I cut in. You knew enough. She sat down, hard, like the weight of her choices finally hit her. We thought you'd handle it, like I always do. She looked up, eyes brimming. That's not fair. No, I said. What's not fair is that I spent 10 years being everyone's backup plan. What's not fair is watching Camilla live like she won the lottery while I drown in her debt. She reached across the table. Juniper, please. She's your sister. I pulled my hand back. And I'm your daughter. The silence between us stretched so long it almost broke something. Finally, she stood, smoothed her blouse like that could fix it. We'll call Camilla, she said. We'll fix this. Good luck, I replied. She blocked me yesterday. My mom blinked, like she just realized for the first time that Camilla might not be the heroine of this story. She wouldn't do that. She did. She also booked 2 one-way tickets out of the country. 3 weeks before the wedding. I watched the color drain from her face. She planned this, she whispered. Yep, I said. And you helped her pack. Her mouth fell open, but no words came out. I stood. There's a number at the bottom of the loan letter. That's who you call now, not me. She stepped toward the door, but paused. This isn't you, Juniper. You're not cruel. I smiled. Tire entitatiers are done. No, Mom. This is me finally being fair. 2 days after my mother stormed out of my office, my dad called. I didn't answer. Then he texted me 5 times in a row, each message shorter and more desperate than the last. We need to talk. Urgent. Please respond. It's your father. Come home tonight. Dinner. 7 p.m. I stared at that last message for a long time. Home. That word didn't feel right anymore. But curiosity, or maybe something more twisted, got the better of me. I drove over just before sunset, nerves buzzing like static in my chest. The house looked the same. Big, pristine, and just slightly too perfect, like it was trying to prove something. The front door opened before I even knocked. My mom greeted me with a brittle smile. You came? Good. We set the table. I stepped inside and caught the scent of baked lasagna and warm bread. My favorite. A dish reserved for holidays and manipulations. The dining room looked like a time capsule. The nice plates were out, crystal glasses, candles flickering in their holders. My dad sat at the head of the table, face tight and tired. He looked older. We just want to talk, he said. I sat down but didn't touch the food. Let's skip the small talk. My mom sighed like she was the one exhausted. We've been talking to the bank. They say the payments are non-negotiable unless the full balance is refinanced. That's how debt works, I said, crossing my arms. And they only refinanced the loan in the first place because I co-signed. Silence. Then my dad cleared his throat. We could sell the beach house. The one Camilla and Trent used for their engagement party. The one you said you'd leave to me someday. His jaw clenched. That's not fair. Neither is giving away my inheritance and expecting me to foot the bill. My mom pushed a bowl toward me. You've always been the strong one, Juniper. The responsible one. You can weather this. And Camilla, I asked. What's she? The wandering poet. The barefoot dreamer with a fraud charge on her heels. She's your sister, my dad said flatly. I'm your daughter. He flinched. I pulled out a folder from my bag and placed it on the table. This is a breakdown of every financial favor I've ever done for this family. Every loan, every check, every rescue. They flipped through the pages. I let the silence speak for me. My mom's face fell as she read. We didn't realize. You never asked, I said. Because deep down you didn't want to know. My dad looked up. Camilla called us yesterday. She's panicking. Said they're freezing her accounts. Visa might get pulled. She should have read the clause I said coolly. She begged us to fix it, my mom added. I raised an eyebrow. Did she call me? They didn't answer. That was enough. She wants to come home, my mom said finally. No, I said, standing. Not this time. Juniper, please. I didn't cause this. I just stopped shielding everyone from the consequences. I picked up my folder, untouched plate still warm in front of me. As I turned to leave, my dad said, You'll regret this one day. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Probably, but at least I'll regret it with my name still clean and my bank account intact. The next morning, Sadie and I sat in her office combing through emails. The loan agency had officially issued notices to my parents. If payments weren't made by the end of the month, legal action would begin. They also flagged Camilla and Trent for potential fraud international flight with no payment plan, classic red flag behavior. You know what's wild? Sadie said, tapping her screen. They booked their flight the same day the first loan payment was due. I didn't respond. I just sipped my coffee, slowly. They planned it, she said again. They knew. They were never going to pay this back. Of course they weren't, I muttered. They never do. Later that afternoon, a new voicemail came through. Camilla. I let it play on speaker while I watered the plants in my office. June, please call me back. I know you're mad. I get it. But this has gone too far. They're threatening legal charges. We need to talk. I need your help. I didn't mean to screw things up. I thought things would work out. They always do. I paused the message halfway. It was the same script, different day. She always didn't mean to. She always thought it would work out. Somehow, it always landed on me. Sadie peeked in. You okay? I showed her the phone. She's spiraling. Let her spiral. That night, Camilla texted me. Mom's crying again. Dad says you've poisoned everything. Congrats. We're your family. You're acting like a stranger. Then one final message. I never should have trusted you. I typed back 2 words. Noted. Then I blocked her. Again. 2 days later, I got an email from the fraud division of the loan agency. They were moving forward. Investigations were active. They asked if I had any additional evidence. So I sent them everything. Screenshots of Camilla's messages. Proof of their flight bookings. Financial transfers between them and our parents, hidden gifts, subtle transactions, the kind you only notice when you look closely. The whole map of the betrayal. Sadie looked over the final file before I hit send. This might be the final nail, I exhaled. Then I hope it lands deep. A week later, a letter showed up at my door, handwritten, from my dad. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one sentence. We didn't think you'd actually go through with it. I stared at it for a while. Then I crumpled it and threw it in the trash. Because that was the problem all along. They never thought I would stop cleaning up their messes. They never thought I'd walk away. They thought the strong one would always stay. But this time, the strong one packed up her boundaries, drew a line, and didn't look back. 3 days after I sent the last round of documents to the fraud division, things started unraveling. Fast. It began with a string of frantic voicemails from my dad. They're freezing our checking account. We got a certified letter about asset seizure. Your mother's on the verge of a breakdown. I didn't reply, not right away. Instead, I sat on my couch with my laptop open and a glass of wine in hand. Outside my window, the world moved on like none of this mattered. Cars drove by, kids laughed in the hallway. Somewhere nearby, someone was playing music through thin apartment walls. And here I was watching my parents finally experience what they spent a lifetime ignoring. Consequences. Sadie called later that night. They reached out. Who? Camilla and Trent, from a burner account. I nearly laughed. Of course they did. They offered a deal. Said if you drop everything, they'll come back and work it out. I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. They don't want to come back. They want to stop the investigation. Sadie nodded. Exactly. Trent's company's being flagged. Their accounts are frozen. They're stuck. Good, I said. Let them sit with it. That weekend, I got tagged in a Facebook post by a mutual cousin. At first, I thought it was just a wedding photo. But then I saw the caption. It's sad when families fall apart because of money. Some people value pride more than love. Comments were filled with passive-aggressive support for Camilla. She always had such a kind heart. Some sisters just don't understand loyalty. I didn't reply. Instead, I posted a photo of my old debt tracker. Blacked out names, of course. But the numbers were visible. Loan totals, payment dates, missed installments. With the caption, "It's not pride when you stop being someone's safety net. It's survival." 10 minutes later, I had DMs from people I hadn't heard from in years. Some were supportive. Others told me to just forgive and move on. But the most surprising one, from my Aunt Marie, my mother's sister. Good for you. I warned your mom years ago this would blow up eventually. Let them clean up their own mess. I smiled at that. Maybe I wasn't crazy after all. By Monday, it was official. The fraud investigation had triggered a full asset review. My parents' vacation house listed for sale by the end of the week. Their joint accounts locked until further notice. Camilla's social media accounts vanished overnight. And Trent, his company's website redirected to a domain unavailable page. Sadie forwarded me a headline from a business blog. Emerging startup under fire for debt evasion allegations. The photo underneath Trent smiling at a launch party holding champagne. Next to it, a screen grab of a legal filing with his name in bold capital letters. I didn't dance, I didn't scream. I just sat quietly in my office and let the truth do its work. 2 days later, my parents showed up again. Not at my office this time. At my apartment. I should have ignored the knock. But something in me was curious. Or cruel. Probably both. I opened the door to find them standing there dressed like they were on their way to a funeral. Maybe they were. My mother spoke first. We lost the house. I nodded. That happens when you ignore legal letters. My father added, the agency is talking about garnishing our retirement accounts. I crossed my arms. Sounds like a them problem. We need help, my mom said quietly. You need a lawyer? I replied. Not me. She blinked back tears. We didn't think you'd go through with it. You keep saying that like it means something, I said. You thought I'd roll over, like always. But I warned you. I gave you every chance. My father took a step forward. Camilla's not well. She's saying things, threatening to sue. She thinks this was your idea. I tilted my head. The clause was in the contract. The signatures were yours. Nobody tricked you. She's still your sister, my mom, I said. No, I said. She was. Before she made me her financial punching bag. My mother wiped her eyes with a tissue that matched her blouse. Because of course it did. We raised you better than this, she whispered. No, I said. You raised me to be useful. Not respected, not protected, just convenient. They stood there in silence, the kind that makes your skin itch. Then my dad said, we're asking just this once for grace. I paused, thought about every moment I swallowed my voice for the sake of peace. Then I said, grace isn't a handout, it's earned. And I shut the door. That night, Camilla emailed me from a brand new account. So, this is who you are now, the cold sister, the one who turns her back. You made your point. Happy now. Attached was a photo of her sitting on a floor somewhere, mascara-smeared wine glass in hand. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Sadie and labeled it Meltdown Number 3. Sadie responded with a single line, this is how a paper trail ends. The next morning, I stood in line at a bakery near my office waiting for coffee. My phone buzzed. Another message from my dad. The agency filed. Court date pending. We're drowning. Please. I didn't reply. Instead, I watched the barista froth milk into a perfect swirl and thought, this is peace. Not drama, not crying on a voicemail, not chasing people who run. Just a hot drink, a clear conscience, and no more secrets dragging behind me. 2 days after my parents showed up at my apartment, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Just my name written in loopy cursive I hadn't seen in a while. Camilla's handwriting. Inside was a note and a thick envelope. The note read, you win. Thought you'd want to see what you destroyed. No greeting, no apology, just guilt gift wrapped in petty. I sat at my desk and opened the envelope. Inside were printouts, emails, texts, transaction records. Most of them were old, some were newer. At first glance, they looked like receipts of shared expenses or maybe bank transfers. But then I saw the dates and the names. One was from my mother to Camilla, just 4 days before the wedding. We've arranged it. Juniper won't suspect anything. Just make sure Trent doesn't talk too much about the loan. Another email. This time from Trent to my dad. We'll leave before it hits. She'll cover it like always. Appreciate you smoothing it out. And another, she thinks we're planning the honeymoon. The flights are booked for the 16th. The 16th was the Monday after the wedding. I remember because that's when I got the first email alert that a payment was past due. I dropped the papers on the floor and just stared. They knew. They all knew. My parents, my sister, Trent, every single one of them had been in on it. Not just enabling, not just hoping I'd cover for Camilla out of guilt. They had planned it, step by step. Right under my nose, Sadie's face tightened as she flipped through the stack in my office. This is Conspiracy June. It's not just a bad loan, it's coordinated fraud. I nodded, though the word still felt strange on my tongue. Fraud. Against me. By my own family. Sadie held up a printed message from Camilla to my mom. Don't worry. Junie's always too focused on doing the right thing. She won't risk the wedding. Sadie looked at me. We can escalate this. I didn't answer. I just stood up and walked to the window. The city buzzed beneath me like nothing had changed, but my entire foundation had just cracked in two. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment with a glass of wine staring at my childhood photo album. I flipped through pages of birthday parties where Camilla got the bigger cake. School awards where I stood beside her holding my little participation ribbon while she took center stage. One photo hit harder than the rest. Family vacation. Me holding the camera. Camilla in the middle of the frame, my parents beside her, all three of them smiling wide. I was blurry in the reflection of a window behind them. Out of focus, like I'd always been. The next morning, I went back to Sadie with one decision. Move forward. Press everything. She didn't ask if I was sure. She just nodded and started typing. We sent the emails, updated the fraud team, flagged every financial tie, attached the proof Camilla had foolishly handed me herself. It was all there, intent, timing, coordination. Enough to nudge this from civil to criminal. By the end of the week, a formal investigation was open. By Monday, my parents' accounts were locked for suspected collusion. My mother showed up again, this time at my building's front desk. I only found out because the receptionist texted me, "There's a woman crying in the lobby asking for you." I didn't go down. Not to be cruel, just because I had nothing left to say. 10 minutes later, I got a voicemail. Her voice was raw. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We thought we were helping Camilla. You've always been strong. We thought you'd manage." I stared at the ceiling. Manage. That was the word they always used when they dumped their problems on me. Manage the payments, manage the emotions, manage the damage they didn't want to face. No, not anymore. Camilla tried again. This time from a detention facility email portal. "You escalated it too far. They're talking about jail time. For me, for Trent. You've ruined everything." I forwarded it to Sadie without a word. Her reply came fast. "She's unraveling, and she still thinks this is your fault." I stared at the screen. She wasn't sorry. She was scared. That's what guilt looks like when it's not backed by empathy, just fear of consequences. 2 days later, I got a call from the fraud investigation officer. They'd reviewed all the documents. The case was solid. Charges were likely coming. My testimony was requested. So was my digital file, the spreadsheet I'd started months ago, tracking every dollar lost to my family's chaos. It was ready. I handed it over. That evening, I poured myself another drink and stared at the email notification glowing in the dark. "Thank you for your cooperation, Ms. Elliott. We'll proceed with next steps. You've done the right thing." The right thing. Funny how doing the right thing never felt peaceful. It felt like grief. Like mourning people who were still alive but no longer family. My father finally called. No voicemail. No text. Just a straight call. I answered. Silence stretched for a beat before he spoke. "We never thought you'd turn your back." I didn't respond right away. Then I said I didn't turn my back. I just stopped turning my life into your rescue mission. "She's going to be charged," he said quietly. "Do you understand that?" "Yes." "Do you care?" "I care that it's happening because of choices she made, and choices you enabled." He went quiet. "Then you used to be softer." "No," I said. "I used to be afraid." Click. Call ended. No goodbye. No apology. Just the same cowardice wrapped in guilt. Later that night, I pulled up Camilla's last message, then deleted it. Not in anger, just as a final act of release. Because the truth was clear now. It wasn't about who hurt me anymore. It was about who I refused to let hurt me again. It was over before it even felt real. 3 weeks after the investigation wrapped, I stood in the back row of a quiet courtroom, watching as Camilla sat in front of a judge, her lawyer flipping through pages that couldn't save her. Trent didn't show up. He'd fled again, this time alone. Classic. Camilla looked smaller than I remembered. Hair tied back, no makeup, a pale gray blazer that swallowed her shoulders. Her voice barely rose above a whisper as she answered the judge's questions. When they read the formal charges, fraud, intent to deceive, breach of contract, I didn't flinch. She didn't look at me once. The same girl who once cried on my couch over a broken bracelet now sat stone-faced as the judge listed her consequences. Deferred sentence. Restitution owed. Restricted travel. Business license suspended. Community service. No prison time. Not yet. But still, enough. Enough for her name to be flagged. Enough to ruin Trent's next big idea. Enough to leave a mark that wouldn't vanish with a vacation filter. After court, I didn't speak to her. I walked outside into the breeze and down the courthouse steps like the past wasn't dragging behind me anymore. Sadie waited by the car holding 2 iced coffees like a true saint. "You okay?" she asked, handing me one. I sipped. "I will be." We stood there in silence, watching clouds shift overhead. A weight I'd carried for most of my adult life suddenly didn't feel so heavy. "You did the right thing," she said. "I know," I said. "Still feels weird." "That's grief," she replied. "Even when you're right, it still leaves a bruise." 2 days later, I got a letter from the loan agency. The debt was officially marked as repaid, covered in full by a mix of seized assets and court-ordered recovery. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer alongside the original contract. A contract that had started all of this. A contract that had, in the end, finally protected me. My parents moved out of their house the following week. They didn't tell me directly. I heard through a cousin who also mentioned my mother was very emotional and my dad had gone quiet. No one said the word shame, but it hung over everything. That house used to feel like something we'd pass down. Now it was just another lesson in what happens when you bet on the wrong child and forget who was holding the bills. I didn't go by, didn't offer help. They didn't ask. We all understood that bridge wasn't under construction anymore. It had been demolished. Camilla emailed me once more. Just one line. "You were never really my sister." I didn't reply. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. For once it didn't. Instead, I focused on the beach house. Yes, the one they were forced to sell to cover the loan. I bought it. Legally. Cleanly. At a reduced price because they were desperate and I was prepared. I'd always loved the place. It was the only spot from my childhood that didn't feel drenched in favoritism or guilt. I renovated it. Painted the walls a soft blue-gray. Bought furniture that matched me, not the family photo aesthetic I used to try to live up to. Put books on the shelves I actually read. Hung one photo above the fireplace. Just one. Me. At graduation. No one else in the frame. Because that moment belonged to me. No more shrinking. No more background blur. Just me, focused, enough. One morning I woke up early, walked out onto the deck, and watched the tide roll in under a pale sky. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. A message from Sadie. "You still get goosebumps when it's quiet." I smiled and typed back. "No, now I just breathe." A few weeks later, I got lunch with Christian. We hadn't talked much since the court hearing, but he'd reached out again. Just a simple, "I'm proud of you. Let me know if you ever want to catch up." So we did. He looked the same. A little older, a little more worn like we all were, but calm. Different. "I saw the news," he said as we waited for our orders. "I thought about texting you, but it felt like you might be done with all of it." "I am," I said, almost. He nodded. "You really did it. You let go." I laughed softly. I had to burn everything down to do it. Worth it. I thought for a second, then nodded. Yeah, because this time I didn't burn myself trying to keep everyone else warm. Later that night, I sat on the sand watching the stars blink to life one by one. The waves rolled in like a lullaby. A steady rhythm I could finally hear without noise in my head. My phone stayed silent. No requests, no emergencies, no one asking me to sacrifice, save, or settle. I opened the Notes app and typed something I hadn't said out loud before. This is what choosing yourself feels like. Quiet, clean, whole. I saved it and put my phone away. Then I leaned back on my elbows, looked up at the sky, and let the stillness wash over me. Sometimes revenge is loud, but sometimes it's just silence, ownership. And walking through a door no one believed you had the strength to close. And this time, I didn't just close it. I locked it behind me and threw away the key. Story 2. The flowers were still drenched with morning dew. On the garden path, I heard the crunching of pricey heels. I didn't have to raise my eyes. I recognized the person already. Only one individual would enter my father's priceless garden wearing high-end shoes. As I continued to tinker with the soil, Laura's phony, sweet voice could be heard. My father planted white roses for my wedding, and I continued to prune them. My ex-husband fled with the lady behind me after the divorce that resulted from that wedding. Right now. "Hi, Mary. You are aware of my purpose," she remarked, taking a step forward. The flower garden was covered with her shadow. "James and I believe it would be best if we had a calm conversation before the will is read tomorrow." At last, I got up and used my gardening apron to clean my filthy hands. There is nothing to discuss. My father lives here. "His estate," Mary said, a smug smile spreading over her bright red lips. "And we think we should get a fair part because James was like a son to John for 17 years. I felt the weight of the garden scissors abruptly increase. "Are you referring to the same James that had an affair with his wife, the secretary, and my father's daughter?" I inquired. Mary waved her manicured fingers as if it didn't matter, saying it was all in the past. "John pardoned him." Until she stopped for a fact, they continued to play golf every Friday. Only 3 weeks had passed since my father's departure. It was still painful. And now this woman was circling around what she believed she could easily seize like a vulture. James would have received nothing from my father, I said, straightening my posture. He wasn't a fool, but he made a lot of mistakes. For a moment, Mary's phony grin wavered. Let's see. Frank, your brother, appears to disagree. I shuddered at the thought of my brother. The funeral was the last time we had talked. He talked to me less and consoled James more. Did you speak with Frank? I inquired. Oh dear. Mary lowered her voice and leaned closer. It's not only discussion that we've done. He's been really beneficial. I tightened my hold on the garden shears, recalling a story my father told me. Lauren, the flowers require a firm hand, but never a rough one. There is a place for even the thorns. Quietly, I murmured, Mary, leave my property, before I lose the ability to be courteous. Her chuckle had a harsh, disagreeable sound. Your land. That's quite cute. Laura, this mansion is worth millions. Were you truly under the impression that you could keep it to yourself, while the rest of us have nothing you pretend to play home in your father's mansion? This home was built by my father himself. My voice was steady as I spoke. One brick at a time. Even though I was furious, I talked calmly. He created every room and planted every tree. Money isn't the issue here. It concerns what he constructed. About what he want to abandon. Mary gave a little chuckle. Legacy. Hurry up. Laura, it's all about the money. And when they read the will tomorrow, at last you will understand. At the garden gate, she halted her progress. Oh, and you'd better get packing. Before we move in, James and I will need at least a month to do the necessary repairs. Down the walkway, her heels clicked away. I glanced at the blooms below. My unsteady hands crushed them, leaving dirt stains on their white petals. I could only see red now, even though my dad used to say that white flowers symbolized a new beginning. I took out my phone and made a call. I know one person who would get it. Julie. It's me. Mary just stopped by. Yes, she is as terrible as we anticipated, I said. Would you be able to visit? Something has to do with the will. I need to discuss this with you. She spoke in a steady, powerful voice. In half an hour, I'll be there. Do not be concerned. Laura, they don't realize how intelligent your dad was. After I ended the call, I noticed something. There was a little envelope protruding from behind a rose bush. There was morning dew on the corner. I immediately recognized the penmanship. It bore my name and belonged to my dad. My hands trembled as I lifted it up, wondering how long it had been buried there, in the midst of the thorns. The weight of the envelope suggested that it contained more than simply text. I flipped it over in my palms and muttered, "Well, Dad, you seem to have given me one final surprise." As Mary's car's sound faded away, I felt like I had the first clue to a puzzle as I stood in the garden. My dad had departed. I suspected Mary and James were going to learn they had messed with the wrong person, regardless of their strategy. Julie arrived just as she had promised. She entered with a bottle of wine in one hand and her legal folder in the other. We might need this, I thought. As she entered her father's study, she held up the wine and said, partly smiling, I sat on the edge of Dad's leather chair, still holding the sealed package. His old books and pipe still filled the room. I wasn't prepared to trust Mary's intentions with everything. You still haven't opened it. With a loud bang, Julie put her folder down and inquired. I desired to hold out for you. As I turned the envelope between my fingers once again, I spoke quietly. According to Mary, Frank is assisting them. I didn't want to deal with it alone after that. Julie filled 2 large wine glasses. Your father made it very apparent that some topics should only be spoken when appropriate. I glanced up. What are you saying? She gave my glass to me. Laura opened the mail with shaking fingers. Yes, I did. I took the envelope open. There was a little key and one piece of paper inside. I read aloud to you, Lauren. In my imagination, I could practically hear my dad's voice. Given how humans behave if you're reading this, someone has already begun pursuing the estate. It's probably Mary. I always thought of her as a shark. No heart, just fangs. Julie chuckled into her glass of wine. My desk's bottom drawer can be opened using the key I've supplied. Everything you need to safeguard what is legally yours is included here. Do you remember the chess lesson I gave you to save the most crucial component you may occasionally have to give up a smaller one? Dad love. I glanced up at Julie. She was on her way to the desk already. You were aware of this? I inquired. Planet I assisted him, waving for me to come use the key, she acknowledged. 7 months ago, immediately after learning that he was ill, your dad came to me. He was fully aware of the potential outcomes. With ease, the door snapped open. There was a USB device and a sizable folder within. Prior to checking those, sitting on the edge of the desk, Julie said, regarding tomorrow's will reading, there is something you should be aware of. 2 days before to his death, your father appended something known as a codicil. A what? She clarified that my request for a revision to the will would completely upend everything. I spread everything out on the desk after opening the folder. Hundreds of pictures poured out. In a parking lot that is dark, Mary meets someone. James enters the office of a lawyer. Julie didn't own that. Additionally, documented bank statements and emails were there. My father had them investigated. Not simply peered into, but whispered. Julie smiled sharply as she spoke. They followed him. Pointing to the USB disk, she said, Mary's attempt to pay off your dad's nurse is captured on camera. 3 days before his death, she wanted to know the well's details. As I took up one of the pictures, my hands shook. Is that Frank? I inquired. 2 weeks prior to Dad's death, Mary and I met. Julie gave a nod. Look at the following one, though. My brother was seen exiting the meeting in the second picture. He seemed angry and repulsed. He appeared to be clutching a check. According to Julie, he delivered the check directly to your father and retained it as evidence. Your dad knew he needed to take immediate action at that point. However, Mary claimed that Frank was assisting them. Confused, I said. Your brother was acting, Julie clarified. In reality, he assisted your dad in obtaining evidence of their actions while providing them with just enough information to make them feel secure. I sank back into the seat. My mind is racing. How come he didn't inform me? Julie explained that Mary needs to feel in charge. Then she opened her briefcase and took out more papers. Mary and James will believe they have won when I read the will tomorrow. According to Julie, they will receive a significant portion of the estate from the first reading. I sprang to my feet so quickly that my wine glass overturned, causing crimson wine to splash into the carpet. Let me be done. Julie raised her hand and spoke. The codicil then comes into force. Laura, your dad set a trap. A provision that reveals all of their deceit and ploys is activated as soon as they accept the bequest. Everything is made public, even the bribes, films, and pictures. I examined every piece of evidence that was strewn across the desk. At last, it made sense. In order to expose themselves, he gave them the impression that they had triumphed. Exactly, Julie remarked with a proud smile. The true will provides you everything. Frank is even the subject of a trust. James and Mary receive nothing but public humiliation for their true selves. What about tomorrow? I smirked as Julie completed her glass of wine. We saw them walk straight into their own trap tomorrow. This is the last lesson your father will teach you about consequences. I took up his letter once more and ran my fingertips over the familiar penmanship. He continued to defend me, mentor me, and support me in advocating for myself even after he passed away. Julie whispered, There's one more thing. Tonight, Frank would like to see you. You need to know something before tomorrow, he says. As the sun started to drop, I peered out the study window. I reflected about my father's meticulous preparation, my brother and Mary's smug smirk in the garden. I said, Tell him to come. Time for a family discussion. It was after dark when Frank arrived. He didn't resemble the self-assured man who stood behind James at the burial. He had black bags beneath his eyes, and his elegant suit was crumpled. Holding a leather folder as if it were a shield, he stopped at the threshold. "You look terrible." "Trying to lighten the atmosphere," I said. He smiled weakly and said, "Yeah, well, it's not as thrilling as it seems in movies to be a double agent." I gestured to the chair opposite from me and said, "Come in." The desk was still covered with everything we had discovered before, even though Julie had departed an hour ago. Frank took a look at the pictures. "Have you discovered Dad's fallback option?" "What were you doing, and why didn't you tell me?" I inquired. My voice sounded harsher than I intended. I had to adjust things, so he sank into the chair. "Lauren, I was mistaken after what transpired with James and my actions during your divorce. I was an idiot. My brother was you." Correcting him, I said, "You were meant to be with me." "I understand," he muttered. He took out a check from the folder. "I got this from Mary. She asked me to tell a falsehood. Let's say Dad signed the last will and testament while mentally sick, only to betray you $500,000. I gazed at my brother and then at the check. "You didn't cash it, though." "No," he muttered. Frank's voice trembled as he added, "I gave it straight to Dad." Lauren, you ought to have seen his face. He was disappointed, not enraged. He then explained his strategy to me. In the hallway, the grandfather clock struck 9 o'clock. Every powerful noise reverberated across the silent space. "There's more." Pulling out his phone, Frank remarked, "Every encounter, offer, and threat was captured on tape. Mary, even before Dad became ill, she had been organizing this for months." He hit the play button. The room echoed with Mary's voice. "We'll use your evidence that the old man wasn't thinking properly to refute the well once he passes away. Additionally, James has a tight relationship with him. Everything will be given to us. Laura won't anticipate it." My hands curled into fists. What time was this? "It was 3 months ago. But hold on, things get worse." He jumped ahead of the tape. James's voice was heard now. "The house will be sold. Take the assets and cash them out. Laura is free to return to her little flat and her pointless gardening work. In any case, she never deserved any of this." "Switch it off," I muttered. Frank paused the recording and took out another piece of paper. "That's the reason I came tonight. Money wasn't Mary's only goal." "Lauren, she desired retribution, retaliation. For what purpose? Because you made James feel bad about the alimony. When you caught them together, he hesitated to expose them." The recollection struck me hard, entering my bedroom and discovering them there. As my marriage broke down, Mary grinned as if she had won everything. For 2 years, she served as his secretary. Frank continued. "She carefully planned everything, integrated herself into his life, and then made sure to become close to her father and his business associates." He gave the paper to me. "This demonstrates that she began stealing from Dad's business 7 months prior to your discovery of them." I took the paper and scanned the page that had account numbers, bank transactions, and everything else put out. "Did Dad find out?" I inquired just before to his diagnosis. Frank said that he was assembling a case, but he altered his plans after learning of the malignancy. According to him, justice must occasionally follow a different course. "The cortisol," I muttered. Frank gave a nod. "Yes, Lauren, tomorrow is going to be difficult. They believe they have triumphed. To document the moment when they seized the estate, Mary even engaged a film team." Despite everything, I gave a little chuckle. She packed cameras so she could record her own demise. That would have delighted Dad. Frank grinned, this time for real. "I want you to know that I'm here now, even though I know I can't change everything that has transpired over the past 2 years. I have your back no matter what occurs tomorrow." I got up and moved toward the window. The moonlight illuminated the garden. Dad found us arguing over that red toy vehicle when we were youngsters. "Do you remember that?" At the window, Frank joined me. "Yes, he forced us to clean all of the windows in the home. Claimed that we needed to develop our ability to perceive clearly." I looked at my brother. Frank, I get it now. What Dad was attempting to educate us makes sense to me, even in the final moments. Frank gave a nod. His eyes were visible. So did he. Winning isn't always the best victory. It's allowing your adversaries to ruin themselves, I added. Once more, the grandfather clock sounded. It was 15 minutes past the hour. A reminder that every tick brings us closer to tomorrow. You ought to sleep. As he collected the documents and pictures, Frank remarked, "It will be a memorable show tomorrow." I watched him go. I put my hand against the window pane. It felt solid and cool under my fingers. These windows had always appealed to Dad. He referred to them as the house's eyes, always keeping an eye on the family. They would see the last administration of justice tomorrow, exactly what he had intended. There was a brilliant sun and clear sky on the morning of the well reading. As I returned to Dad's study, I observed Julie arranging papers on his large wood desk across the space. Camera teams were preparing their gear. This is Mary's film crew. When he entered, Frank remarked, "She's out there, you should see. She is rehearsing her charming speech of acceptance." "Is everything prepared?" I questioned Julie. She gave her briefcase a tapping. "Ready copies of all the evidence, including the codicil, are sealed in this envelope. The remainder of the will come when they have approved the first section." As soon as we heard Mary's high-pitched, upbeat voice, there was a sudden commotion from the corridor. "The new chandelier will be hung here. The outdated one is very outdated. Everyone places." As she adjusted her jacket, Julie spoke. "Now let's get the show started." Mary was the first to enter, dressed in a pricey black gown that most likely cost more than some people's whole salary for a month. James, wearing a well-fitting suit and seemed nervous, followed her. Following closely after the camera team checked the camera angles and adjusted the lighting, Laura James nodded sternly at me. It was the first frank conversation he had had with me since the divorce. "Let's get started," Julie John's attorney stated as she stood behind Dad's desk. "Along with any other papers he left behind, I shall read his last will and testament." Mary was so excited that she almost jumped in her chair. "We're prepared," the same as Julie had told me. They seemed to have won the first reading. I was to receive 70% of Dad's estate house and business shares, while James and Mary were to receive 30%. I was aware. Mary grabbed James's arm with a shriek. We were too important to John to exclude. Julie, however, spoke once more. Mary's jubilation was interrupted by her voice. "The will now includes a codicil, 2 days before to John's death." Mary's grin dimmed. "Oh, what a shift in the will." James spoke softly and nervously. "What sort of alteration?" Julie opened the envelope that had been sealed. "A thorough examination of specific financial matters discovered in the months before to John's passing is required of anybody who takes the inheritance specified in this will." There was utter silence in the room. The camera crew appeared to be immobilized as well. "What are the financial problems?" Mary inquired, her voice no longer joyful. "Perhaps these will clarify." As she passed a collection of pictures over the desk, Julie spoke. "Or this USB device. Someone attempting to bribe John's nurse is captured on camera. Consider these bank documents that demonstrate Jeremy Industries' money theft." One of the pictures was picked up by James. His face became white. "All of this, where did you acquire it?" "From the corner," Frank stated. "Dad kept a lot of evidence, including recordings of both of you having plans to contest the will by lying about his mental health." Mary got up so quickly that her chair toppled over. "Now switch off those cameras." "Oh no," I replied, taking a step forward. "The camera remains in place. Remember that you wanted this moment captured on camera." "This is not possible." She lost her temper. "Tell them they can't do this, James." However, James continued to gaze at a single picture of him bringing private documents into the office of a competitor. Julie calmly remarked, "The codicil is very clear. This proof will be forwarded to the authorities if you attempt to take any portion of the inheritance. You make the choice." "Choice?" Mary gave a sour laugh. which choice were trapped by you. No, I informed her. You have yourselves trapped. You got here because of every lie, every scheme, and every attempt to grab something that wasn't yours. You are to blame for this. You are to blame for this. She turned on Frank and yelled, You were meant to assist us. Frank gave a shrug. I was helpful, but not to you. James, she pleaded. Speak up. James's hands were trembling, but he was already on his feet attempting to fix his tie. Mary, it's over. We were defeated. It's the devil. She let out a scream. That girl cannot win. She is nothing. Dad's voice was heard clearly when that girl arrived. My daughter's on the other side of the room. Everybody froze. A video had been pressed play by Julie. On one of the displays, Dad's visage showed up appearing powerful, yet exhausted. It had been captured a few days before to his passing. And you've shown your true colors if you're watching this, he continued. As I had anticipated. I anticipated that you would. In the video, Dad's voice was heard. Consequences are always a better teacher than greed. Mary withdrew slowly toward the door, her mascara streaking black over her cheeks. It's not over yet. She gave a hiss. Julie answered quietly. Actually, yes it is. The front hallway is where the cops are waiting. They want to discuss the stolen funds with you. I advise you to collaborate. When they choose your penalty, it may be useful. I sensed my dad's presence throughout the room as the police removed Mary and James as the cameras continued to film. He had everything arranged not just to safeguard his reputation and company, but also to provide one last lesson in patience, fairness, and honesty. All right, Frank whispered into the silent chamber. I suppose their big moment was caught on video, not the one Mary had hoped for, though. In the worst way possible, the subsequent media attention was just what Mary had desired. By nightfall, my phone was going non-stop with calls from reporters, and news vans were parked outside. Frank turned up the volume on Dad's ancient TV in the study and said, You have to see this. Every channel was showing Mary's arrest. Her pricey clothing made her tear-streaked face appear much worse. Numerous instances of fraud have been discovered throughout the Jeremy Industries probe as police officials allowed her to board a squad car. The reporter stated, Switch it off. I rubbed my forehead as I spoke. I am no longer able to view. At that moment, Julie ran into the room, grinning broadly and holding out her phone. It improves, she remarked. Just now, the district attorney phoned. They discovered phony businesses, offshore bank accounts, and more. Mary wasn't only pilfering from her father's company. She was in charge of a whole fraud scheme. And I said, James, I have no idea why. He was still important to me. He's telling them all of Frank's words. When he faces actual jail time, it turns out that he is not as devoted. We all jumped when there was a loud knock on the study door. A police detective entered and took a quick look. He apologized, Miss Jeremy. We need to review some recently discovered evidence. There's more. I gestured for him to sit as I requested. Now what, in Miss Henry's apartment, we discovered paperwork. Oh, he said. It appears that she has previously engaged in similar behavior. She has attempted the same thing with other affluent families in at least 3 previous situations, but she has never advanced this far. Julie bent over. Other households? Indeed. She usually got close to them by working for them or through mutual friends. The detective explained then she'd find ways to take over their money and property. He opened a folder and slid it across the table. Sound familiar? The secretary job, I muttered. It wasn't random. No, it wasn't. The detective confirmed she targeted your ex-husband because of his link to your father's business. The affair, that was just her way in. I felt sick to my stomach. For 2 years, I had blamed myself for the end of my marriage, but now everything looked different. There's one more thing, the detective said. We found this in her private files. It's a full plan of what she was going to do once she took control of the estate. He handed me a paper that made my heart freeze. It had detailed notes about accidents that could happen to me after the house was transferred. There were also plans to blame Frank for stealing money, and even drawings showing how she wanted to tear down Dad's garden and redesign the house. "She would have killed me," I said quietly. "She never would have gotten the chance," Frank growled, holding tightly onto the arm of his chair. The detective nodded seriously. "This new evidence increases the charges along with the fraud and bribery. She's now facing 17 to 22 years in prison, at the very least." After he left, we all sat in silence, still trying to take it all in. Then Julie's phone buzzed again. "It's my contact from the DA's office," she said, reading the message. "James just finished a statement. He admitted everything, even that he helped Mary get access to private company files before your dad passed." "Did he know about her plan to hurt me?" I asked. Frank looked through the documents. "No. According to this, she kept that part a secret. She probably knew he wouldn't go along with it." Then a thought hit me. Dad knew, didn't he? That's why he planned all of this. Julie nodded slowly. Yes, he suspected something. That's why he hired private investigators and recorded everything. He wasn't just protecting his company. He was protecting you. I walked over to the window outside. The garden was filled with reporters and news vans, but the roses still bloomed, peaceful and untouched, unaware of the disaster Mary had planned for them. "We should release a statement," Frank said. "We need to get ahead of the story before Mary's lawyers twist the truth." "I already wrote one," Julie said, pulling out her laptop. "It's simple, says we're working with the police and asking for privacy during this time. It's professional, respectful. Everything Mary never was." "Dad would have liked that," I said softly, managing a small smile. "There's one more thing," Frank said, pulling an envelope from inside his jacket. "I found this in Dad's personal safe. It's labeled after justice is served." My hands shook as I opened it. I knew the handwriting right away. It was my dad's. "My dear Lauren, if you're reading this, then the truth has finally come out. Don't let this experience harden your heart. The garden still needs your care and life still needs living. I didn't set this plan in motion just for justice. I did it so you could be free. Free from fear, free from doubt, and free to bloom again. Love, Dad." Outside, the reporters were still talking live on TV about the scandal, the arrests, and the betrayal. But inside Dad's study, surrounded by everything he left behind to protect me, I felt something I hadn't felt since I caught James with Mary 2 years ago. "Peace." So Frank said quietly, breaking the silence. "What now?" I looked out at the roses, then at my brother, then at Julie. Now I said we rebuild together. The first court hearing came faster than any of us expected. Just 1 month after the wall reading, I sat in the courtroom watching as Mary and James were brought in wearing orange prison uniforms, very different from the fancy clothes they used to wear. "All rise." The bailiff called Julie, squeezed my hand as we stood. She had insisted on being both my lawyer and my support, saying sometimes you need both legal skills and a friend by your side. "You don't have to talk today," she whispered. "The evidence speaks for itself." But I knew I had to. Dad's last letter said not to let this make me bitter. Staying quiet would feel too much like fear. As Mary walked past our bench, her eyes met mine. I saw pure anger in her face, but something else to fear. Her lawyer had been trying to make a deal, but the district attorney wasn't going to agree, not with all the proof stacked against her. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, "the state would like to submit Exhibits A through F showing 2 years of fraud and planning." I sat quietly as they showed photos, bank records, and secret recordings with each new piece of evidence. Mary's face turned whiter. James didn't even look up. He just stared at his hands, shoulders slumped. The state calls Laura Jeremy to the stand. Walking to the witness stand felt like crossing a huge distance. I could feel every eye on me. Reporters writing quickly, the jury leaning in, and Mary staring holes into my back. "Please state your name for the record." "Laura." "Jeremy, can you explain your relationship with the defendants?" I took a deep breath and looked right at Mary. James was my husband for 17 years. Mary was his secretary, and the woman he had an affair with. And after your divorce, they got married 7 months later. Then they started visiting my father often while he was sick. Objection, Mary's lawyer said, standing. That's not relevant. It shows motive, the prosecutor replied. It proves they planned the step-by-step. Overruled, the judge said. Continue. I talked about everything. The visits, how they tricked my father, Mary's threats in the garden, and all the evidence that had gathered with every word. I could see Mary's lies falling apart. Miss Jeremy, the prosecutor said, holding up the papers found in Mary's apartment. When did you find out about these plans to harm you? Objection, Mary's lawyer shouted. That's all. Just theory. These documents describe real plans to hurt the witness after they took over the estate. The prosecutor said. The judge looked at Mary over his glasses. Overruled. I found out after their arrest, I said calmly. My father thought something like this might happen. That's why he collected all that proof. That's why he changed as well. He was still protecting me even after he passed away. Suddenly, Mary stood up, the sound of her handcuffs loud in the room. He was a controlling old man who couldn't stand to see his precious daughter lose anything. Mary shouted, "This whole thing is a setup. Miss Henry, sit down," the judge ordered firmly. "You think you've won?" Mary yelled at me. "You think this is over? I made your husband leave you once. I ruined your marriage, and I'll find a way to ruin everything else too." The courtroom broke into chaos. Officers rushed to hold Mary back as she kept screaming threats. James looked like he wished he could disappear. Order. The judge shouted, slamming his gavel like thunder. "Remove the defendant." As they dragged Mary out of the courtroom, still shouting, I caught Frank's eye. He gave me a small nod. Everything she just screamed had been recorded in court, destroying any chance she had of gaining sympathy from the jury. The judge called for a break, and Julie quickly guided me out of the courtroom in the hallway. Reporters shouted questions, but Julie led me past them like a pro. Once we were in a quiet room, she let out a breath. "Well," she said, "that outburst just sealed her fate." "Did you see James's face?" Frank said as he joined us and closed the door. "He finally saw her for who she really is." I dropped into a chair, feeling completely drained. Dad knew. He knew exactly how she'd react when she was cornered. "People like her can't handle losing control," Julie said, checking her phone. "The DA just texted me. They're moving forward with more charges because of what she said in court." "How much time is she facing now?" I asked. 36 to 40 years at least. Julie replied, "James might get less for helping, but he's still looking at 12 to 17. I thought of Dad's roses still blooming peacefully in the garden. He always said the truth finds its way to the light eventually." Speaking of truth, Frank said, "There's something else you need to know. It's about Dad's evidence. Something we found in his safe this morning." Back in Dad's study, Frank pulled out an old, worn leather journal. The police found this during a final search of Mary's apartment. He said it was hidden in a fake bottom of her desk drawer. "What is it?" I asked, reaching for the journal. Frank held it back for a second. "Before you read this, you need to understand. Dad knew about it. That's why he was so sure about Mary's real intentions." Julie leaned forward. "Is this what I think it is?" Frank nodded. "Yes. Her playbook. It's a detailed record of every family she's targeted, every scam she ran, including her original plans for us." Frank opened the journal to a marked page and began to read. "The Jeremy family is the perfect target. Rich father, tense family relationships, a daughter who trusts too easily. The husband is the weak point, easily fooled by compliments and attention." My stomach turned. "Stop. You need to hear this," Lauren, Frank said, continuing. "Phase 1, complete. Marriage destroyed. Phase 2, separate the daughter from her support system. Phase 3, earn the father's trust. Final phase, remove all obstacles permanently." That's when Dad confronted her. "Isn't it?" I asked, remembering how suddenly he'd insisted on changing his will. Julie nodded. He showed me this journal 2 months ago. That's when we started building the case. There's more, Frank said, flipping to another section. She wasn't working alone. There's a whole group behind these scams. Names, dates, bank accounts, everything. Just then, a sharp knock broke the silence. The detective from earlier stepped into the room looking even more serious than before. "We've been digging into Miss Henry's background," he said, "and we found something big. She's not who she says she is." He laid a stack of documents on Dad's desk. Birth certificates, passports, driver's licenses, all with different names but the same face. Her real name is Jennifer Aniston. She's wanted in 2 states for similar crimes. The FBI has been searching for her for years. Jennifer Aniston. I repeated the name. Hit me hard. Isn't she the woman who was convicted in California for killing that businessman? The case was ruled an accident, the detective said, but yes, same person. She served 6 years for fraud, got out, changed her name, and started again. Your father was her biggest target yet. Julie was already dialing her phone. I'm calling the DA. With this history, she's facing life in prison. There's one more thing, the detective added. He handed me a small USB drive. We found this in her safety deposit box. It's a video of your father confronting her about the journal. We thought you'd want to see it, with shaking hands. I plugged the USB into Dad's computer. His face appeared on the screen, sitting in this very study, looking straight at Mary. I know what you're planning, Dad said, his voice strong. I've read your journal. You've had quite the criminal career, haven't you, Jennifer? On the screen, Mary's face turned white. Did you really think I wouldn't look into the woman trying to destroy my family? Dad said. I've known who you really are since the day started working at my company. Then why? She asked, why did you let me stay? Because sometimes the best way to catch a snake, Dad said, leaning closer, is to let it think it's winning. You're dying, Mary Jennifer spat at him. You can't stop me. Dad gave a cold laugh. My dear, I already have. You just don't know it yet. The video ended, leaving the room completely silent. He knew I whispered. He knew everything from the start, and he built a perfect case. Julie added one that would protect you and expose everyone helping her. The detective picked up his papers. The FBI wants to speak with you tomorrow, with this journal and your father's evidence. We can take down her entire operation. After he left, I walked over to Dad's chair and ran my hand over the worn leather. He had let her believe she was winning all while making sure she'd never hurt anyone again. Classic Dad, Frank said with a small smile. Always thinking ahead. Julie's phone buzzed. The DA just approved the new charges, she said. It's officially a federal case now. Mary Jennifer won't ever leave prison again. I picked up Dad's journal, the one he'd written in for years, and flipped to the final entry. Sometimes justice takes patience. Sometimes it takes sacrifice. But most of all, it takes faith in the truth. Lauren will understand when the time comes. The garden will bloom again, stronger than before. The next court session is tomorrow, Julie said gently. Are you ready to finish this? I looked around at the documents, the journal, and out the window toward the garden where this all began. Yes, I said. It's time to finish it for Dad. For everyone. She's hurt. And for you, Frank added softly. Mostly for you. The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom like thunder. In light of the overwhelming evidence and the added federal charges, the judge said this court sentences Jennifer Aniston, also known as Mary Henry, to life in prison without the chance of parole. Mary Jennifer stood stiff in her orange jumpsuit. All signs of her fake charm were gone as she was led past us. She stopped and looked at me one last time. I hope you're happy, she hissed. You've ruined everything. No, I said calmly. You did that to yourself. The only difference is this time your victim fought back. The bailiff pulled her away as she tried to say more behind her. James was already being let out to begin his own 17-year sentence. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around shouting questions, but Julie stepped forward. her voice firm and clear. My client has no comment except to say that justice has been served not just for her family, but for all the families affected by these crimes. Back at the house, Frank was waiting with something in his hand. The FBI finished going through Dad's study, he said, and they found this hidden in his desk. He handed me a small box. Inside was a single key and a note for when justice blooms. Check the greenhouse. The greenhouse had always been Dad's private space, a quiet place he went to think. I hadn't stepped into the greenhouse since Dad died. Do you want us to come with you? Julie asked gently. I shook my head. I need to do this alone. The key turned easily in the lock inside. The air was warm and filled with the sweet smell of blooming flowers. Dad's orchids were still alive, beautiful, and well cared for. I guess Frank had been looking after them these past few months. In the middle of the greenhouse was Dad's old workbench. On top of it sat a large envelope with my name on it. Inside was a property deed and a letter. My dearest Lauren, by now justice has been done, and the truth is out. But justice wasn't the only thing I wanted to grow in this greenhouse. I didn't just grow flowers here. I grew hope. Hope that you'd find your strength again. Hope that you'd bloom even when others tried to keep you in the dark. The deed in this envelope is for the empty lot. Next year, old flower shop I boarded the day after I confronted Jennifer. It's time for Jeremy Gardens to grow beyond our home. You have a gift, Lauren. You bring beauty into the world that shouldn't be limited to one garden. Remember what I taught you. Some flowers bloom best after frost. You've made it through your winter. Now it's time to bloom again. Love always. Dad. I walked back to the house in a daze, holding the letter and deed tightly. Frank and Julie were waiting in the kitchen. Well, Frank asked. I spread the deed out on the counter. He bought the lot next to my old shop. He wanted me to grow the business. That's not all he did, Julie said, pulling out her tablet. He registered Jeremy Gardens as a business name 7 months ago. He set up everything. Permits, funding, business plans. It's all ready. It just needs you and us, Frank added. I've picked up a few gardening tips lately. Someone had to keep those orchids alive. Just then, there was a knock at the door. The detective stepped in, smiling. I thought you'd like to know. 2 more people have come forward. They were also victims of Jennifer's scams. With your dad's evidence, we're about to close more than a dozen unsolved cases. Dad would have loved that, I said. He always believed the truth comes out in the end. Speaking of truth, Frank said after the detective left, I found something else while I was taking care of the greenhouse. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of a small plaque tucked among the orchids. It read, "For Lauren, who taught me that the strongest flowers grow in broken places." He put that there right after your divorce, Frank said. I think he always knew you'd find her way back. Julie smiled and pulled out her legal pad, that familiar spark in her eyes. So she said, "Should we get started?" I started working on the business papers for Jeremy Gardens as I looked out at Dad's garden. The roses were still blooming, still standing strong. No matter what had happened beyond the flowers, I could see the future Dad had imagined for me. He didn't just want justice. He wanted me to grow. He didn't want me to just survive. He wanted me to thrive. Yes, I said, feeling stronger than I had in years. It's time to build something new to Dad, Frank said, lifting his coffee mug to justice. Julie added, raising hers. I picked up my own mug, thinking of orchids and roses, of truth, of endings and new beginnings, to blooming again, through the window. The garden glowed in the afternoon sunlight. Each flower was proof of Dad's belief that even in life's hardest moments, something beautiful can still grow. He gave me more than justice. He gave me back my future, one bloom at a time.